Good evening and welcome to Everyday Conversations regarding mental health, coming to you live from the old Heale Manor. And because there's nothing on the telly, you might as well watch this. Unfortunately, again, got a problem. My guest didn't turn to. In fact, I had an email from my guest yesterday saying that he was unable to do it. He's going to be on next week. So I found another guest. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what's happened, but at the moment, he's not been able to come in. He may join us in a bit. If not, then you've got me. I've got quite a bit of stuff I want to get through. So, live awesome quizzes on Tuesday. I've got a special coming to you for next week. It's raining cats and dogs, and guess what? I've only managed to convince the old Duchess, who compiles all the quizzes for you guys, to come on and be a co-host. So be sure to join us next Tuesday for a live awesome quiz over on the quiz channel. So, but this show's all about everyday conversations regarding mental health. And what we're trying to do is trying to highlight mental health and everything surrounding it and take the stigma out of it. For far too long, mental health issues have been treated as a stigma, as a taboo subject that people don't really want to talk about. So what we're trying to do is we're just bringing it out to the open to make it comfortable for people to talk about, to have an everyday conversation about it. Because sooner or later, so many people have had little wobbles and some have had massive wobbles. But that's what we're trying to do. So I try and get on guests every week to come and chat about their experiences, their coping mechanisms, how they got through it. I mean, if you go back to the early 19th century, the First World War, lots and lots of guys got what they called shell shock. We now know to be post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a big thing. And it doesn't always necessarily come from conflict. Trauma can come from all sorts of places. Lots and lots of people have childhood traumas. And that can be something like being bullied mercilessly at school. And I've got somebody coming on in a few weeks. I'm just waiting for them to confirm. But they're an advocate to child problems, child bullying and repercussions of it, child self-harm, child suicide. Imagine your kid, you don't know, they've been bullied mercilessly at school. And then you go into their bedroom one day and you find them hanging from a lampshade. How do you think that's going to make you feel? Good evening, Vanessa. Thank you for joining. So I've got that's one of the subjects that we're going to talk about. But from that, I mean, lots and lots of people have childhood problems that come to the fore later in life, where they've probably been bullied at school. And later in life, it plays on their minds for decades. And it leads to anxiety, depression, and all sorts of things. So that could be termed as post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's something that we're going to be looking at. Something else I want to that we try and highlight on this channel is veterans issues. I mean, myself, I was a veteran. lots of people know my story, and veteran suicide is massive. It's massive. The same as child suicide. It's yeah. So that's devastating. That's devastating for the whole family, everybody around. Vanessa says, one of my cousins hung himself in 1991. I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm then. I know, and that has an effect. I'm sure at the time while you were on operations, you found out that had an effect on you at the time. Did it affect your effectiveness to carry on doing your job? Lots of people. I mean, it's terrible when you lose somebody. But another cousin killed himself just before Thanksgiving here in town at the cemetery. It's so prevalent nowadays. So many people are struggling with that. Indeed, hospital commander came to tell me. I found out I was in Kosovo in 2000, and when my father died, I found out, I think it was about 2 weeks later, I got what we call a bluey. So I got a letter from my sister telling me that the old man had just been buried the day before. So I didn't even get to come back for the funeral. And in 2003, I've been in Iraq for a few months. Wasn't enjoying the job particularly, but this I think it was a Friday afternoon. I got a phone call to go and see the Padre, Fort Assad. He doesn't normally want to see me. I went to see the Padre, and he gave me the bad news that my wife had just been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's high-grade lymphoma, and she was about to start chemotherapy on the Monday. 24 hours, that was the worst 24 hours of my life. To be honest, the stuff that was going through my mind, but the military were absolutely fantastic. The vicar said, go and pack your kit, you'll be on the next flight out. And within a couple of hours, I was at the airhead. I was stuck on a flight and flown straight back to the UK. When I got back, there was somebody to meet me. There was a car, took me home. What a horrendous weekend that was, going through all those emotions of finding out. She went through all that. She went through the treatment. The unit were fantastic. They gave me the time to be able to look after her. She went through all that, and she was clear for a year and 11 months. And I was mounted again, ready to go to Afghanistan in 2005, or was it 2006? Yeah. Yeah, I think it was 2005. I was due to go to Afghanistan, and we'd gone for a checkup, year and 11 months. The doctor said, well, if they're clear for 2 years, she'll probably be okay. It came back, and she died in the November, on the 10th of November 2006. Wow. I was broken. I was absolutely in bits. Devastating at the time. And thankfully I was with her when she died in the hospital. And a funny thing, about four years or so later, I was doing a visiting officer job. I changed jobs. I came back and in 2000, I think it was about 2010, something like that, I was doing a visiting officer job when I was a welfare officer, and a guy, I took his wife to the same hospital where my wife had died, and that was a surreal experience. But that was that. On that same week, my uncle from Vietnam War committed suicide in 91. Commander didn't know what to say, but to go and come back in a few days. I know it's really tough losing people, but that's what we're trying to do on this show is to talk about it, to get it out in the open, to be able to discuss it, because suicide is a big problem nowadays. Lots and lots of people are doing it. Kids are doing it where they're being bullied at school. We're going to talk bereavement.
Tim Heale was a soldier.
That caught me out. Right, let's move on. So, what I'm going to be discussing tonight is, like I said, a little bit about veterans. Back in November, around Armistice Day, I did a piece for the national news, it turned out. What had happened was, just before we had Remembrance Day, a news team came down because the census had been released, and one of the questions on it was, were you a veteran and where do you live? And it turns out that where I live is the biggest concentration of veterans in the country, which is fantastic for the likes of myself, because I've got lots and lots of ex-military types knocking around. Boom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this little clip that came off the news. There is a black piece in the middle. For some reason, that piece of the video didn't come across. However, there is the voiceover on it. So I'll play that for you now, and then I'll come back in after. So here you go. Have a watch of this. He says, this week we're going to talk bereavement.
Tim Heale was a soldier for 44 years. Now he presents a podcast dealing with veterans' issues. His experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan led to him seeking counselling from his GP.
I found personally it was a complete and utter waste of time, because yes, the counsellors were really good, but they just didn't understand what I've come through, and they weren't really able to help.
That need for specialised help for veterans led to a specific question being added to last year's census. Now the results have been published, we know there are 1.85 million ex-servicemen and women in England and Wales. Crucially, we also know where they live.
It's really important to know the number of veterans living in the country, so that we know where those people are living, what their needs are, and that the local authorities in those areas can provide the services and meet the needs of those veterans where they're living.
When they retire, veterans often prefer to stick to where they've previously been based. It means there's still a support network of former comrades. This group meets regularly near Gosport on the south coast, with its links to the Royal Navy.
We walk around towns and things like that, and you bump into people that you serve with and have a good chat and things like that. It is still very much a naval community, this area.
But military service often teaches self-reliance, meaning some are reluctant to seek help, even when it's needed.
Most people in the military are very proud. It takes a lot of courage to take the first step and step across the threshold asking for help. Once people do, it's absolutely transformational, because we've, not just us, but other charities there to help people, and I've seen lives changed in the course of a very short period of time.
The message on the eve of Armistice Day: you may no longer be in uniform, but you're not alone. Ian Woods, ITV News.
So there you go then. That was the piece we did back in November, and I'm part of that VOS the Veterans Outreach Support, and it's a great organisation. They lay on lots and lots of functions for veterans. And in fact, I was at that group this afternoon. We meet every Thursday down here in Gosport, and you always get a really good turnout, particularly on the last Thursday of the month, because we get bacon rolls and sausage rolls. The rest of the time it's just biscuits and a cup of tea or cup of coffee and a wet. So that group is brilliant. They also lay on other events for us. I've been on 2 boat trips. They paid for a trip on a motor gunboat 81, which is one of these fast patrol vessels from the war. They had the motor torpedo boats and the motor gunboats, but they've got one of these gunboats, and we're doing 30 knots. So from Portsmouth to Cowes and back in less than an hour. And we went out on the RAF 102, which is a search and rescue vessel, doing about 25 knots up to the Solent and back. Good evening, Keith. How you doing, mate? You've noticed that I haven't got a guest in tonight. The 2 guests I had lined up, one of them couldn't make it tonight. He's coming on next week, and I'm not sure where the other guest has got to. But we're having Tech Troublemaker. Excellent. Good evening. If it's your first time here, welcome. So we're talking with this show. We're talking about everyday conversations regarding mental health, and some of the subjects that we cover is we're trying to destigmatise the conversation around mental health. We look at veterans a lot of the time because I'm a veteran. We're in a big veterans area in the country, so that there's lots of help and availability out here for veterans. We're also going to be looking at homelessness. Lots of veterans and other people find themselves on the streets more often than not through no fault of their own, because something's happened in their life, one thing or another, and they end up on the streets. We're going to be looking at loneliness. Loneliness is a killer. So many people end up by themselves, stuck in the same flat or the same house once they've lost a partner or something like that, and they're lonely and they don't know where to turn to. But they shouldn't need to be lonely, because there are hundreds of groups out there. We're really lucky in this area with VOS, which is the Veterans Outreach Support. There's another group around here called Buns and Banter that we go to, which is another fantastic group. There's another group, although they're putting together a museum called Conflict Military Museum Gosport. They are looking at helping out veterans. There are so many different groups. There's civilian groups as well to help civilians. You can go to dance classes, you can go to all sorts of different classes to meet people. So loneliness isn't a problem. There's a big solution to loneliness. Yeah, self-isolation it tends to be a bit of a mindset. If you find yourself in that position of being lonely, then it's down to you to take that first step to not being lonely, to finding groups to go to. Like I say, there's a whole raft of people to go out to, and it it's identifying that you're lonely to start with. Sometimes it just sneaks up on you. It's like becoming homeless. You sort of ignore your problem, and then all of a sudden you're being kicked out of your digs, and you find yourself on the street. So sometimes loneliness can sneak up on you, particularly if you're susceptible to anxiety and depression. That's another bad thing. I mean, lots of people are anxious over different things. They get depressed. And it's difficult to turn yourself around. For somebody like myself, I'm positive. I always have been. My glass has always been half full, never half empty. Although, having said that, I have had some dark times, particularly when I lost Sandra. I didn't really have a great deal of time to grieve her initially, and that was because before she died, I was stood up to go to Afghanistan. I was taken off of that particular rotation and put on another team. So effectively, I swapped places with somebody. When she died on the 10th of November 2006. So I was put onto another team, and I deployed out in the January of 2007 to Afghanistan, and yeah, it was because the job I was doing was so busy. I mean, our work was important. We were working from sort of. We used to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. We was in work for 8 o'clock after breakfast, and we work until 9, 10 o'clock every night, just to keep up with the amount of stuff that we were producing. Back then, I was producing a lot of radio stuff, so I was recording a lot of stuff, doing a lot of editing. Now, it's hard enough editing audio at the best of times, but try editing audio when you don't understand the language. It was a challenge, but that took my mind off of my grieving. I didn't have that opportunity to grieve, and it wasn't until I came back off of that tour in the summer. I had, I think, about 7 or 8 weeks leave. We'd already sold the house. My daughter had done everything and sold the house. I'd moved into the science mess at that time, so I got stuff in storage, and I had a room in the mess. Once we'd had all the debriefs and everything from the operation, I was on leave, and I went to see a few people and stuff like that. But for me, it was a struggle trying to cope with being lonely, and I was in the bar every night. I didn't really have anywhere to go, and somebody suggested, well, why don't you jump on something like directdating.com? So I did. So I ended up spending sort of about 6 weeks going out dating. And then I got together with a young lady off of one of the dates. We were together for a couple of years, and yeah, but it wasn't gonna work. But and then I was seeing my best mate's wife at the time, who I'm now married to. That's the Duchess. Because I was godfather to the 2 boys, so I used to call on them, and I was between dates, as it were, and we decided that, well, why don't we get together? And the rest of the family thought it was a great idea, so we ended up getting married, and we've been married now for nearly 13 years. Grief. Time flashes by when you're enjoying yourself. But her husband died a year and a day before my wife. He died on the 11th of November 2005. And that was suicide. He took his own life. And the range of emotions that one goes through are really, really tough. You know, there's the anger, there's the disbelief, there's a whole raft of emotions that are associated with a suicide, and the way he did it, it was awful at the time. But on reflection, we surmised some of the reasons why he possibly did it. We'll never know for sure. But there were a few things that were possible indicators. But if somebody's determined to do it, you're not going to know until they've done it. Somebody that does a half-assed job at it is a cry for help generally. And those are the people that you could help. So that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about. We've also covered in the past bereavement, and we've had guests on telling their story, how they've coped when they've had loss, and we've had different people coming on talking about different losses. My best mate Harry died last year, hottest day of the year. He goes and falls off the roof. He bounced off the conservatory, bounced off of his wife's car, put a dent in it on the side of the roof. I mean, good job the fall killed him, because if he hadn't, she would have done. And we've had his wife and daughters on telling of their experience, how they're coping. They got counselling and how that's helped. So we're putting in place lots and lots of different strategies for people to help on that sort of thing. We've also been looking at addictions. Addictions can be paralysing. You get functioning alcoholics, people that can't go a day without having a bottle of whiskey a day. Yet they can still sort of function. But it does affect them. I mean, drugs. I don't understand drugs personally. However, people do get addicted to it. I mean, you quite easily get addicted to painkillers. Now, underneath this gorgeous exterior, there's an absolute train wreck going on. I'm kind of riddled with rheumatoid arthritis. I've got a lot of osteoarthritis going on, where I've worn joints out because I've abused this gorgeous body for so long. And it's pain. I'm in pain all the time. Most of the time, I can live with it. When I can't live with it, and I struggle, some mornings I actually struggle at getting out of bed. And I have to pop some pills. Tinnitus is another thing. My tinnitus is horrendous at the moment. I just had a phone call from the tinnitus experts this morning. I've got an appointment in a week and a half's time on the 28th. I'm beside myself. And it does drive people to suicide. People become suicidal because of the tinnitus. And I know exactly where they're coming from. I know exactly how they feel. Although I don't feel quite suicidal, but it does your head in. It's just constant. It's just a constant noise in your head. And there's not an awful lot I can do about it. But I've got these hearing aids that I've got setting on there for tinnitus that tries to counteract it. I ain't done an awful lot of good at the moment. There you go. So anyway, what I'm after, I'm looking for some help. I'm looking for help with the channel. I'm looking for people to come on the show and discuss their experiences, or just get involved, like you guys tonight, coming in on the chat, just giving encouragement. It's important, and we need to spread this message far and wide. We need to get as many people talking about these issues, to make it people comfortable in talking about these issues. So many people find it difficult to talk about. So many people have issues and they deny it. They live in denial. So many people find it still a taboo subject. They still think that there's a stigma around mental health. And each and every one of us should help, should take the stigma out of the mental health issue. Because that's what we need to do. If we can get out in the open, get people talking about it, make it an everyday conversation. Take death, for instance. We're all going to die. But for far too long, people have found talking about death really difficult. We've all suffered loss, I'm sure. Everybody has lost somebody in the family. Whether it's a parent, a grandparent, worst, a child, a relative, a brother, sister, an aunt, an uncle, an aunt, a granddad. We've all lost somebody. And it's difficult. It's difficult at the time. But it should be easy to talk about, because let's face it, we're all going to die one day. Some of us live longer than others. Me, I've got a ticket to 102. Once I've had my second telegram off the king, that's it. Pop my clogs. But it's having that, it's being able to talk about it. I think that's the key, is to be able to talk about it to everybody, to make it comfortable to talk about. That's the thing that really we need to be looking at, is to make it a comfortable conversation and to not have a stigma around it, to not have it as a taboo subject. So I think I've rattled on for long enough. Oh, do you like my backdrop tonight? I got a parcel today. A few weeks ago, I was on a show. It was a show similar to this, where people are in the chat and they have a giveaway, and I won the giveaway. So I got myself a cushion, a plush duck, and a mug, and a hoodie. $100 of merchandise that's been sent over from America, and it arrives this morning. So that's, if you see my show, Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories, most of the interviews I've done have been on StreamYard, and that's the platform that I use to go out on there. And just happened to win a little doobie what's it. Check me out. So I'm going to pull the pin on this. I'd just like to thank everybody that's been popping comments in. My dad's family is gone. My mum and two of his sisters are still with us. Mum's family has 13 brothers and sisters. Wow. sooner or later you're going to spend a lot of time going to funerals. And with funerals, they've been, I don't know whether you noticed that nowadays it's not a you don't mourn people anymore. Lots and lots of people, and now what they're doing is commemorating somebody's life and making it a joyful experience, saying goodbye to them, rather than sort of all being mournful and sad. It's celebrating their life, and I think that is a good way of going forward, because you shouldn't mourn the loss, you should celebrate the life that they've had. And yeah, I'd like a Viking one, but I'm not sure that the local council will like me being pushed down a river burning on a longboat. But there you go. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. Hope you've got something from this. Please join me again next week, where I've got 2 guests on, inshallah. And come over onto the Live Awesome Quiz channel on Tuesday. I've got the Duchess joining me on Tuesday. She compiles all the quizzes, so she's going to be my co-host, and she's going to be asking some of the questions. So until then, TTFN, ta-ta for now. Thank you one and all.